real quick before we get into the episode. The first part pertains to things anyone can do to get money through real estate. And the second part is actually going into the industry, advice for people who want to be in the industry, such as being an agent, Section 8, those types of things. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the Sikhana podcast. I'm Akam. I'm here with Tonya Hamlin.
Hi.
Tonya is currently a residential real estate agent. Tonya, what's a little background on how you got to where you got?
Sure. I'll give you the quick version, hopefully.
Yep.
I got my first job before I turned 14,
Uh-huh.
and it was at Del Taco. I worked for Del Taco for 2 years. And I was lucky because my aunt was a manager there. So it had me in. I only was allowed to work 15 hours a week. And from there, I kind of stayed in the restaurant business for a while. I did do a variety of things, but I was in the restaurant business for 14 years. And during that time, is really when I got a taste for learning or training. Back then we called it training. Now the term is more appropriately learning. And while I was doing that, I was going to school after 18. I went to college. I got a couple degrees, even went for my master's, but got kind of pulled away in the restaurant business because I became a training manager and opened restaurants.
Uh-huh.
And so my love really is learning and training. And I've supported lots of different industries. From after restaurant, I was in the tech field, then the medical field, and ended up in banking. And I was in banking for about 15 years. And my last role, I was an SVP, and I was the director of learning and organizational development, which is the learning piece is kind of simple, but the OD piece is more complicated. But to give you an idea, I did things. I was in charge of performance management, not the kind of performance management where we're judging whether when they're not performing. This is more about big picture goals and what you want to achieve.
Okay.
And then I did things like leadership training and cultural kind of stuff. So it was a pretty cool job. So in total, I did learning for 30 years. And my real story is that I hurt my back for the third time. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I was working 50, 60 hours a week, traveling 2 weeks out of the month. And honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do. And my mom got her real estate license in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. She was always my agent. And I've been doing buying and selling for over 25 years. And I said, you know what, let's try it. Yeah. I don't want to stay home. I was, once I started getting a little better, I'm like, I can't stay at home. I'll go crazy doing nothing. And you can volunteer, but, it's a little bit more. And so got into real estate. That's kind of the shorter version, believe it or not.
How long have you been in real estate?
So this is my 7th year. Mm-hmm. And I'll be 8 years with my license in May, the very beginning of May. But buying and selling for a lot longer. So I've bought mine. I used to move every 2.5 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. So people in the corporate world thought I was crazy because I moved so much. But I made a lot of money and I loved it. Uh-huh. So, yeah.
Just starting it off, what are some creative ways college students or younger people can use real estate to make extra money? Like for example, if you're in college, renting out, you told me renting out rooms. Could you elaborate on that?
So if you just want to utilize real estate, not be a real estate agent, that doesn't mean you can't buy property. I have interns, as Akam knows, I have interns. And one of my interns, meaning they got a lot of help from mom and dad, bought something at where they are living in the college town, and they bought a house, and then they're renting out the rooms.
Okay.
So they're not necessarily making money. It's maybe more the parents, but they're getting a lot of experience in utilizing the things they learned when they were with me, honestly. So that's pretty cool.
So for in a broad basis, for someone who's trying to limit their funds, but also get started in real estate, what are some tips that you have for that?
Yeah. So I'm super passionate about education. Obviously, I was in learning for 30 years. I still feel like I'm just still kind of in learning a little bit. But education's critical. I feel like some people think they know everything. Yeah. And I feel like you never know everything. So education, no matter what field, I think is critical. In real estate, it's way more complicated than most people think. So you just need to keep learning and keep growing and learning from other people and taking classes. I think that's really super important.
Okay.
Did that answer that question?
Yeah. What type of classes? So for someone who doesn't have a lot of connections or any of that, how would they start off? In
So
terms,
are we talking that they have their license or they're still going to get it?
they've taken the test. After the test, now what do they do?
Yeah. So for me, I think really critical to get a mentor. I
Okay.
think no matter what field and what level you're at, everybody should have a mentor. I don't care if you're the CEO.
Why?
Because one, they're going to be a feedback source.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get into executive management, a lot of times you're making all the decisions, but no one's giving you feedback. And there's tools and forms people can use to get feedback, but one-on-one feedback is way different.
Yeah.
You know? So I think having a mentor is really important because you could ask questions, but then you can say, well, like we're doing right now, what should I be doing right now?
Yeah.
What should I be learning that I don't know?
How would you go about finding a mentor, though?
So it depends on where you're living. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is your license has to be held at a brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, for example, I'm with Coldwell Banker and I'm actually at what's called an affiliate. So we're part of the Coldwell Banker brand, but our brokerage is owned by an independent. So in that brokerage, that local brokerage, there's people that are
Okay.
going to be open to mentoring you. But then on the wider scale, there's people. You might be asked to have a mentor that lives 3 states over from you or in another country or another continent.
Uh-huh.
And you might not just have one. You could even have a couple
Yeah.
because they're teaching you different things. Like I'm a global luxury property specialist. That's the title.
Uh-huh.
It's too long, but it is what it is. I could say, hey, I want to get someone that's in the international space to mentor me.
Yeah.
And that might be an opportunity that it would be different than having someone here locally.
So if you just got your license, if you didn't know Coldwell Banker, how would you go about finding a mentor? Would that be LinkedIn? Would that be emailing? Would they look? How would you do that?
So if you're still at a brokerage, there might be someone within that brokerage.
Okay.
But if not, you could be at a small firm or maybe there's just not someone that's into doing that.
Okay.
Then you might go to your association. So like I'm part of Placer County Association of Realtors. Mm-hmm. There's 4,000 members. They're not all active in the association, but if you go to the meetings, for example, we have marketing meetings every Tuesday morning, mm-hmm. minus a few holidays. You might sit someone at the table, or you might even just go to the association and say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Do you have recommendations?
Yeah.
But there's lots of opportunity to meet people there.
Okay. What type of people, or in general, do you think it's worth for people to try the short-term rentals, like Airbnb type of things, to get that extra money? And following that, what should people know before starting those types of things?
I think starting any business, you need to understand the risks.
Okay.
So I've had rentals now, I don't know, it's 15 plus years. And I had to evict someone one time. And that was really a horrible experience. Uh-huh. Financially, it was negative, but just emotionally, it was awful. And even when they finally left the house, right, I still didn't have income coming in. I still had a mortgage, but the house was, holes in the wall and stains, and it was just awful. So that could be a risk, loss of income, but then you have to fix the property and go through the emotional piece of it. What I have found personally is that the active adult community is a really good way to go, mm-hmm. because active adults tend to be super responsible and they take care of your property like it's their own. That's just been my experience.
Yeah. So if you were to give a quick 30-second pros and cons for doing those short-term Airbnbs, what would some pros, what would some cons be?
So first, full disclosure, I have not done an Airbnb.
Okay.
I have evaluated doing Airbnbs, and I've decided I don't want to deal with it. Well, you have to manage it.
Okay.
So, you have people coming and going, and just like anybody staying in any place, mm-hmm. will they leave on time? How are they going to leave the property, right? What about when the property's empty and you don't have anybody in there and you have no income? Mm-hmm. You're still got all your costs. But some people make a lot of money on them. Yeah.
So I have a friend, Lucas, who's looking into Section 8 real estate right out of high school, mm-hmm. just going straight into that. What do you think about Section 8?
I can't disclose my own personal experience because I'd be disclosing someone else. It can be very positive, mm-hmm. but it can also be really negative. Mm-hmm. It could be a hard start, but then be really consistent income. So I feel like, once again, what are the risks? What are the pros, cons? You got to do a profit and loss statement, and you need to do a formal one. You could work with an agent that will help you do some of that, but you got to pick the right agent.
So you're in Section 8?
No, no,
Okay.
no.
Okay. Okay.
I have to be careful what I disclose. I
Okay.
can't talk about my people that have rented from me.
Okay. What are some or what should someone look for if they're looking into their first property renting and they don't really have much experience? What type of what should they look for? Is that location if they're
So
looking to
they're
rent out?
looking to buy or rent.
Rent.
So they want to buy and then rent it out, or they just want to get into their first rental.
Get
Like
in their
just,
first rental.
yeah, just be their first place.
Yes.
Right. Still location's important.
Okay.
Right. And it depends on the individual. Like some people want it to be really quiet, and a lot of rentals aren't quiet. So you might go into the rental place and say, you know what, this place I'm not sure about, but hey, there's this N unit that's next to open space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that might be work for me. I actually have a sister that lives in New York City, and she has rented and rented and rented.
Oh.
And she is the expert, in my opinion, because she's moved so many times. Yeah. She says, this building is good because it's pre-war and it has this thick walls. And so, it depends on you, right? What is important to you and what works for you. And then always, always read the contract.
For renting or renting. Buying and then flipping. So buying and flipping and renting that out, what would you look for in terms of the house that you want to buy specifically?
So if you're going to buy something and then you're going to rent it out later.
Yes.
So first of all, you got to do your same thing, profit and loss statement. What are going to be your costs? And whether you're buying to rent or you're buying to own and live in it, you always got to look at the taxes. The taxes are really critical because those are constant costs. Most likely will not go away. Sometimes Melrose will go away, but they'll often not go away for 20, 30, or 40 years. Okay. So that's really important to look at, but also look at demand. So for example, if you're looking at buying a property, look at the local rentals. What are they charging? What are they charging for things to do things with the house? So, but that goes back to the profit and loss statement. Right? Because that's going to analyze all that for you. Yeah.
Being an intern under Tonya, I want you guys to understand. She stressed the idea of location and how important that is. If you were looking into this perfect house for someone's looking into buying a house and they want to rent it out, what specific parts of location would you look at? Would you look at if it's close to the freeway? Would you what specific things, if you're looking to rent out, what are good location, habits, you could say? What are good things that people could look for?
So it depends on the area again. Okay. Placer County is very different than Sacramento County. Mm-hmm. If you're in the city in Sacramento, walkability is really important to that community. Yeah. Can they walk to the co-op? Can they get on their bike and go to a club or a restaurant? Where here, it's going to be a little bit different. If they have kids, they're going to want to know about the schools. Right? If they're an active adult in an active adult community, then they might want to care about the proximity to the club, right? Yeah. So there's no one answer to that question. Mm-hmm. The critical thing, though, is you want someone in it paying you so that you can make money.
Okay. Have you invested in real estate?
Many times.
Okay. Yeah. Is that commercial, residential? What do you invest?
Not commercial. I've never done commercial.
Okay.
So right now I own a house and I have a rental in an active adult community.
Okay. What type of person would you recommend to do that? Those having a rental and renting it out, and what are some benefits that you get from that?
So it depends on the property, and that profit and loss statement is really important. So for example, right now our rental, we are not making money on our rental. Okay. Right now. Now we get write-offs. Right. And I'm not a tax person, but things like depreciation can really help you, benefit you when you do your taxes. Mm-hmm. But long term, it's going to make money because it will go up in value. And then when we do decide to sell it, then we'll make money from it. Okay. So there's two different benefits. One benefit is for us is actually having the write-off. It's not that much of a loss. It's very small. But because of depreciation, it's giving us additional write-offs that we need, frankly. And then down the road, we'll have the property. And who knows, maybe we'll turn it into a long-term Airbnb, or maybe we'll sell it, take the money, invest in something else, or go on a 6-month trip. I don't know.
Yeah. So financial situation when determining if they want to rent or buy, what would the ideal situation be to rent versus ideal situation to buy?
So I think it's always a good time to buy.
Okay.
Honestly, always.
Why?
Well, multiple reasons. One, it's a home. And a home means you get to choose the color of your walls. It means you can have what pets you want to have. It means that you don't need a concern that there's someone right on that other side of that wall, although you could get a condo or townhome, right? Oh, sorry. I'm like probably making noise there. And it's your place. But the other thing is you're making money on that eventually. You might not always make money. This is slipping. You're not always making money maybe in that moment. Like I had a property I bought in 2007, and that's when the housing market crashed.
Yeah.
And that's a long story. But I just didn't sell it. I held on to it. I lived in it, and then I rented it out until it got to a place where I was going to make money. Okay. So, I still had the write-off. So to me, when you're in a rental, you're basically paying somebody else's mortgage. That's kind of a coin phrase that people say, but you have no chance of making money and you don't have the write-off.
Okay.
Did that answer that question?
Yeah. So are there any common like tax benefits or write-offs that homeowners or renters can like take advantage of, but they're like are often overlooked?
I think people don't think about that when they're buying.
Okay.
So that in essence, yeah, they might be overlooking them because they're not educated. Either their agent's not educating them or they haven't gone out and done the research. Mm-hmm. But very specifically, you get to write off, and there's limits, but you get to write off the taxes you pay and the interest that you pay on a mortgage.
Okay.
So those are huge benefits, but those are financial. But then there's the benefit of the things of just having your own home.
Okay. So what about energy? I looked this up. What about energy efficient tax credits? Are you familiar with that?
So, for example, we put solar on our house a few years ago, and so we got a credit for that. The amounts are always changing. You got to make sure you're educating yourself currently about what the write-offs are, and there's a write-off is different than a credit. So when we got our solar, we actually got a credit, so that really helped us on our taxes. And then we're getting the benefit of the solar itself. Okay.
So you talk a lot about education. For people who aren't in Coldwell Banker and are, looking to educate themselves about real estate, whether it be become an agent or rent out or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Where would you recommend they go to educate themselves?
So if you're an agent, hopefully your brokerage is providing education. So through Coldwell Banker, they have their own university and their own classes. So I'm Coldwell Banker. So for example, I get training from our general manager that does training. A lot of our classes are Coldwell Banker branded. So she's actually doing face-to-face training instead of having to go online. Okay. Or you can go online, and then you can also go to your association. Like Placer County here, we do great classes. I'm on the education committee there, and they're fabulous. Okay. And then if you have a good agent, they're going to educate you. So I don't just educate my interns; I educate my clients. Yeah. So because I want them to make good decisions.
Yeah. What about people who aren't agents?
So then if you're not an agent, hopefully you have a good agent. Okay. Right. But there's other classes like Sierra College, for example, has real estate classes, and obviously there's tons of online resources. But connecting yourself to the right agent is really important. I'm passionate about meeting with my first-time buyers a year in advance because I start the education process way early. Yeah. So then they can make good decisions in the future and be watching the things they should be watching, but also doing things and not doing the things they're not supposed to.
I know you just got McKenna. McKenna was one of Tonya's interns, and Tonya does an internship program through Sierra College. So McKenna wasn't your intern. She just became a real estate agent. This question is kind of for newer agents. What are some common mistakes that new agents make, and how could they avoid them? What are a few that you've seen?
So I'm sorry to repeat myself, but staying educated is really important. When you take your real estate classes, you are learning, but you're also learning about what you're going to need to know to take the real estate exam. It does not teach you how to do the job. Same thing like an attorney. It's the same thing. You go through college for 3 years. You go to law school for 3 years. You work so hard and study so hard for that exam because it's one of the hardest exams out there. And then it doesn't teach you how to do the job. So aligning yourself with the right brokerage and the right mentor is super, super, super important. Okay. And then keep taking classes. There's a process where you have to renew your license every 4 years. take classes, you have to take ethics training, things like that. But keeping yourself educated and going to what your brokerage is offering and what your association is offering, critical. Because it's always changing. It's never the same.
Are there any common mistakes that you've seen?
Oh, yeah. I think there's a lot of common mistakes. Like, for example, people don't stay up on the forums. So most brokerages utilize the California Association of Realtors forms. It's called ZIP forms. Knowing what's in there, understanding what they mean, all the fill-ins, and then what you don't know, going and asking good questions of your broker.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah. What type of people specifically then do you see becoming successful within residential real estate?
So I think number one, communication is really important.
Okay.
So consistent, regular communication with your clients, your brokerage, even your peers, because you're going to learn something from everyone, and hopefully you're going to pass along some good tidbits. So really good in communication is really important. And so even if you wanted to take a class, that might be a great class to take, is a communication class.
Yeah.
You could do it online. You could do it at the local college. I think that's really important. So education, communication, and then knowing your business and knowing your market that's around you.
Okay.
So if you're new, those are all things that are important.
So you specifically do something that not a lot of realtors do, in that you constantly keep tabs on your client or your previous clients and clients that you're looking to target, and you send them stuff. So you stand apart, right? It's safe to say. What are some tips for people who want to stand apart as an agent? Obviously, there's 1.6 million agents in the United States. What are some strategies that you recommend to build your own brand or in this competitive market?
I think it depends on how you want to work. So my business is very personal. You know, if someone says it's just business, I'm like, no, my business is personal. So I really work within my sphere. I'm not, interested in buying leads or finding people on the internet. I either know the people or I know the people that refer them to me.
Okay.
So that's how I do business, but not everybody does business that way. They're looking to do more transactions or build a bigger business. The people part is really, really important to me. Like, once someone's a client, they're my friend for life, basically.
Yeah.
So I stay connected to them.
Okay.
And I do that through different mechanisms, but I also do it through entertainment, inviting people to parties and sending them Christmas cards, like things we do with our friends.
Okay. What else? So Christmas cards, parties, you do Valentine's, I know that.
Sometimes I do Valentine's things. It depends. I also do newsletters.
Okay.
And I'm realistic because I do mine from scratch. I don't use a tool. I've created the brand and the look and feel of the newsletter myself. And so it's a lot of work to produce. And then when you mail it, it's a big investment to mail. So, but I think people like it. And some people, and I farm really differently than people. I don't know. That's another way I stay connected. Do you want me to talk about that?
Sure.
So in my community, it's called Crown Point. And we have about 160, we're getting close to 170 homes that are there now. And I live in the community. So that also makes a difference when you live in the community that you farm in. And I have a canasta group, a book club. I'm not in the book club currently. I'm actually on the wait list because I've never done it before. So one of the other residents really manages that. And then I have a bunco group. I do ladies' coffees. I do something called a barkathon, and that's a longer explanation, but another way to connect. And then I also help with the garage sale and the HOA. And then I do some other things here and there, you know. We have a community garden.
How important is maintaining those connections? You said it yourself. Most of your transactions are off connections, off people referring, off all of that.
Well, one, I think you have to like it. Like, I'm an extrovert. I'm not as strong as an extrovert as I was when I was your age. Yeah. But I like it and I enjoy it, and that comes through. So if you're a person that doesn't want to do bunco or do canasta or have parties, it might not be the way for you, but you need to figure out a way that works for you that's going to keep you connected. Everyone knows multiple realtors, everyone. Yeah. So one, you want them to not forget you, but two, they need to like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to pick you. Yes, they want someone that's knowledgeable and that's going to get them a really great end result to their transaction, but they also, They want to like you.
So if there is a new agent who doesn't really have a large network, how would you what would you recommend for them in getting their first few clients
Yeah. So
if they didn't have like a brokerage? I guess if they were just by themselves and they like just got thrown into something, yeah.
Well, a brokerage is likely not going to give you leads.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to offer and support you, be there to help you, educate you, answer your questions, do things for you depending on the brokerage.
Okay.
But they're unlikely going to give you leads. They do get leads that come into brokerage and they might hand them out based on probably production in the brokerage. But so for example, like, you mentioned McKenna, she's young, brand new. So for her, number one, we're looking at her sphere. Who's in her sphere? From her parents to her parents' friends to her high school friends to, people she's met through other mechanisms. So that's one way. Another way is to actually select a farm. You don't have to live in the farm. So right now she's trying to figure out what farm. So I'm giving her little ideas. We'll use tools through our escrow company that we like to work with. They have all kinds of awesome apps and things that give you data that help you make a good decision. That's one way. And so what basically the story I'm telling right now is expanding your connections, expanding your network. You can do some online work to gain some people.
Like what?
Like, for example, there's agents that out there that get solid, 30, 40 leads a year out of Instagram.
Okay.
Right. So it depends on what you want to do. You can get leads from, I've gotten transactions from LinkedIn, so it just depends on what you want to do, where you want to focus. YouTube is another opportunity.
Wow.
So if you wanted to really work YouTube, that's another possibility. So there's lots of different ways to do it. But I would tell you, like, the number one thing you have to do is you have to ask for the business.
Okay.
And that was hard for me. I don't like asking for help. I want to just do it myself. Like, I'm very comfortable doing it myself, but I quickly learned that I need to ask for the business. I need to ask for referrals and I need to ask for the business and let them know that I would love to help them. People want you to want to love to help them. So
how important for you is maintaining connections, and how do you do it specifically? How do you maintain connections? I know I've seen some people who like have a spreadsheet for, especially for previous clients that they've had, and they'll like check in on them. You specifically, what do you do to maintain your connections?
So, I mean, that's some of the things I've already shared keep me connected, but you mentioned a spreadsheet.
Yes.
So a CRM, contact relationship manager, it's a tool that's been around for decades. Any kind of sales business is a tool, but I don't think you have to have a certain system. You could use a spreadsheet. You can keep it real low tech. You have to do what works for you. So for me, for example, I do have a CRM that I don't pay for. It's through Coldwell Banker, and it will connect with people for me automatically. I also have my newsletters. My newsletters go out in paper in my farm, but I do email newsletters. So I use that as a tool, and I actually have email lists that I utilize. And honestly, I use notes. And the notes app keeps, because then I can just copy and paste those into emails anytime I want to put an email out. And I've gotten them broken down. Like, I do ladies' coffee, so I have to have a list for the ladies. And then I have a list for everyone, and then I have a list for my farm. And so I use those lists. But I do have a low-tech spreadsheet I use that tracks my immediate business. So I have one spreadsheet, 2 tabs. One is for current business that's going to come in the future, and then near future, not far away for future. Like, oh yeah, I want to move in the next 3 to 4 years. They're not on there yet. And then I have a list that tracks my actual closed transactions. So that helps me because honestly, one of the hardest transitions for me coming from the corporate world to this business is there's no regular paycheck. There's no benefits. There's none of those regular things that I had for 30 years. So for my sanity and to know what I have coming, I kind of track who I know either I have in contract already or who are looking to sell in the spring, who looking to buy next year. I have all that. And then it's really top of the mind for
So
me.
what is a CRM, if you could explain that real quickly?
It's a contact relationship manager, and it's a system of some kind. Now there's apps, but back in the day, I actually used to teach this class to salespeople, and it just tracks the people. So names, addresses, now emails, phone numbers, all those things, and you can utilize it to communicate. Some of them are just, it's a tracking tool. Some people just use their phones, but I think the phone doesn't do enough. But I mean, it's not bad. Like you look at a contact on your iPhone, has a little note section, but it's not going to track their property.
Okay.
Right. So like I have a tool that's called HomeBot, and it's a tool anybody can buy. It's the one thing I pay for. And what's cool about it is it tracks the properties. So, and it's just really user friendly, and it tells them their home values. What if you bought an Airbnb with your equity? It will price that out for you.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool tool. And there's tons of them out there. But basically, it's tracking your contacts.
So what does HomeBot do specifically? A little bit more in it.
So it tracks the property. So if I put somebody's home address in there, it will give them a comparable market analysis, a value. Keep in mind, it's an online value. So the best way to get the most accurate value of your home is to have a professional come to your home. Because the system doesn't know that you have a pool or you upgraded your kitchen or any of that stuff. But then if you can put your loan information in there, if you have loan information, so it tracks that for you. And then it will tell you, you have this much equity and you could do this, or you could borrow money and do this. So it's a pretty fun tool to play with. My clients love it. That's why I pay for it.
Okay. So you've worked with larger and smaller companies. What are the key differences that you've seen within those, and what advice would you give to someone choosing a brokerage to go with?
So I'll just use my personal situation because I have the best of both worlds. So Nick is my broker.
Okay.
And so it's really his small business, right? Because it's his brokerage. We have like 100 agents, but still, it's still a small business. He owns it. It's his, right? But on the other side, we have Coldwell Banker, this massive global brand that has over 100,000 agents in 40 plus countries. So we get the support of that brand. And I love the brand. It's over 100 years old. I just love everything they do. I love the luxury section. But then we also have the small feel where you get personal. It's more personal. So I think it's better to have both. I'm passionate about having the corporate brand because of what they offer me.
Okay.
Some people they think more freedom, but really that drives down to the broker.
So smaller give you more freedom. So smaller brokerages,
they're not going to have the same guidance or boundaries that you might have in a bigger one.
Okay.
But some people want to have their own. So you can get your own brokerage license and have your own brokerage. But honestly, that is not one of my personal goals.
Yeah.
I like having the support of the brand because it's an incredible brand. My brand would never be as good.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
What do you see for the future? Obviously, interest rates have gone up since COVID, but the future of the real estate industry, where do you see that going?
So I'm not a huge advocate for AI. I think it's going to help us in the future, and I think everything is a tool. So for me, for example, a little example of AI is that I can go into ChatGPT and have them, but long as I can put in the right parameters, it's going to give me a draft of something. Am I going to use what it put out? Heck no, I'm not. But it might give me ideas. So it's a cool tool. But I think it's a very personal business. And I think that you need a person to market. If you think that AI or any kind of technology can market a property like an individual, I just completely disagree. So will it change? I think it's always going to change. It just changed dramatically last year. So when we went to buyer contracts, requiring buyer's contracts in August last year, that was a massive change for a lot of people out there because it never was required ever.
Yeah.
But I think change is exciting. And since I'm only, going to be 7 years in the business, I love when there's change because it's easier for me to compete, honestly.
What is the most important thing? This is going a little bit broad scale for entrepreneurs in general. What is the most important thing that they could focus on when starting a business, whether it's in real estate, and their own business or any other, in terms of that they can do right away? What are some important things that they can do?
So I think even before you start your business, you need to have a strategy and a plan. And those are two different things. I think a lot of people, especially when I've worked with executives, they were very hyper focused on the strategy, but the strategy is meaningless without a really effective operational plan.
Okay.
So a strategy is like big picture, like for look at me for example, Crown Point. You know, my strategy is to be the go-to realtor in Crown Point, right? Okay, that sounds fabulous, right? But how am I going to do it? Then that's like, you know, you're actually in the community making those connections. You're actually, when you get a listing, you have a really positive result, then that you can market. That's the plan, right?
Okay.
But the strategy, yeah, be the go-to realtor in Crown Point. Sure.
Yeah.
Does that answer the
That
question?
makes sense. Yeah. So how can someone leverage, I know you said you weren't a fan of AI, but to leverage technology, leverage AI to improve their business and client relations, how would someone go about that?
So I think tools are awesome things. Tools are not always technology, but in our world today, a lot of the tools we have are technology
So how would you
based.
use that?
Yeah. So for example, honestly, I'd rather have my interns write my property descriptions than AI, but a lot of agents use AI to do property descriptions. What is great about, I really like about ChatGPT though, is they actually, when it outputs the answer, it's formatted really nicely. So that's nice because that's less work. And then you can edit as needed. I like using, like I said, the CRM. So that's technology I utilize. The escrow company gives us a great app to do our net sheets. So a net sheet is basically a sheet that shares or calculates all the costs to what you're going to get out of the transaction. And you can do it on the buying side too, but sellers, it's critical for sellers, especially now where they have to calculate in if they're paying commission. And that tool, I love that tool because in it, like literally in 2 minutes, you have a net sheet where historically, like 10 years ago, people were doing them like
Manually.
but you know, maybe on an Excel or something, or they might go to their escrow company to produce it. But now it's on my phone, on an app, and in 2 minutes, I have a net sheet that I can send to my client. Love that tool. I also like utilizing a lot of the tools that I get through Coldwell Banker. So using marketing, paper marketing is critical, you know. But I do prefer my interns for all my social media.
Okay.
They do a better job, honestly, than any of the tech that's out there.
If you could give someone just five tips to succeed in real estate, what would they be?
So number one, I'll kind of go in order. Number one, pick the right brokerage.
Okay.
And a lot of times brokers they're always looking for more people. The more discerning brokers are going to interview you though and make sure you're a right fit for them. But always remember you're interviewing them too.
Okay.
So make the right choice. Do your homework. Look online. You know, how do they look online? You know, talk to the agents that are already there. Right. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, then is get educated and never stop educating. Got to. You just got to.
Okay.
Which I know I've said that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your face. Number three, though, is really be a good communicator.
Okay.
Like really important. And don't stop because, you know, you're familiar with that. I really love personality types. Yeah. But you might have a way you like to communicate, but that's not the best way for all your clients, you know, or your potential clients. Some might want text, some might want email, some maybe only want calls, maybe they want a combination, or maybe they only want you to call them at night and they only want you to, but they still want you to text them during the day.
Yeah.
So make sure you know, effectively communicate.
Okay.
And then the next thing is I believe in being part of your association.
Okay.
They're going to provide education as well, but just going to the meetings, you get educated. There's rock stars that go to the meeting and they're going to teach you something. So that's number four. And then number five, really have a strategy and a plan and work it.
Okay.
Don't just do it and then forget about it and say, oh yeah, I did that plan. What was on there? No. Revisit. So I would say those are five good things.
How do you stay consistent? How do you stay, how do you keep reworking it? Like, do you have like a remind app? I mean, how do you stay on that?
Well, so like I'm a big process person because that's what I did in the corporate world.
Yeah.
I built processes and then executed them. And then sometimes I managed them or sometimes someone else managed them. I don't think you need to go down or write a policy and procedure on things. I don't think so. That might work for someone, but that's too much for me. but having regular things. So like, for example, I post every weekend. It's on my calendar. I live by my calendar keeps me straight. If I didn't have my calendar, I'd be in so much trouble. And as people that know me, they know that I'll be like, are you going to send the invite? Should I send the invite? Like everything lives on my calendar just so I'm consistent. So there's some regular activities like the market meeting Tuesday mornings for Placer County. It's on my calendar every week. Now, do I go every week? No. But I put it on there and then make this decision that week if I'm going to go.
Okay.
Because I believe in balance.
Yeah.
Some people live at the association. That's just not where I'm at. I need balance in everything I do. So,
what are some creative way agents can market themselves if they're on a tight budget?
So I think this is a really good question because I live by it still, no matter what. Like I'm willing to pay a lot of money when I'm marketing a listing because one, I want it to sell for the best price and I want it to sell quickly. Mm-hmm. That's always my goal. So I'm not going to limit myself at all on that. And I'm going to be positive and say, I'm going to earn commission from this. So I'm going to invest in this listing so that we get the best results. But when it's not a listing, you don't, and when you're representing a buyer, it's never for sure. You know, some people need to move, but still, it's never for sure. So I'm a little more careful. But in general, when I'm creating that consistent communication, then I'm doing things that are cost effective. Like in my farm, I mail every other quarter and I email the other quarters because it's so costly to mail. So now, if I had no money to mail, then I'm going to figure out, okay, can I print this? Because I don't have emails. Mm-hmm. Once you get emails, it's free, right? So emails are always the goal. I'm still always my goal is to get emails. No matter who you are, I want to stay connected. I want your email. I don't care about the phone number, honestly.
Okay.
I care about the email.
So what else besides emailing and newsletters and all that, tight budget, what can someone do?
You walk.
Okay.
So you're.
And what do you give? Like you give your card or?
You can give your card. That's one way to do it. But the best thing is to offer something of value to them.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be something expensive. You're always offering value. I mean, really, any industry, any job, it's what value are you bringing to the table, to the organization, to the team, to the business, right? What's your value? So you can do little things, you know. So it might be a newsletter that you have done yourself, that you spent you bought 50 pages of paper. That's it. Mm-hmm. That was your investment, right? Or maybe you're allowed to print at your office. You print those, and maybe you have some real estate data for that local community, and you hand it out with your card.
Okay.
You know,
that's how you market?
Huh?
That's how you would market?
If you don't have any money, yeah.
Okay.
You know, because mailing is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, so for example, where I live, it's a gated community. It has an HOA, so you can't walk the streets in there. So the only way an agent can get in is if they know someone or if they do mailings. So I have seen so many agents come and go doing mailings in my community because they thought, hey, if I could get in here, it didn't get them anywhere. But if you go in a community that is going to answer their door and you can actually have a conversation, even if it's a short conversation, they're going to remember you. You're not just a postcard. And it costs you cents because you just gave them something of value.
Mm-hmm. For entrepreneurs who are in real estate, what's the best way to stay motivated when you face those slow periods or rejection? You said yourself, people who don't know, real estate is very up and down. You can never predict how the market will work, how many clients you're going to have. What's the best way to stay motivated through that?
So honestly, that spreadsheet I told you about that tells me my current clients that are either are buying in the near future or going to buy in the next year. That's very motivating for me. And I need to have that because I can see it. And then I also track, like if I was referred, because I do something called the client appreciation parties, and the people that refer me also get invited. So that's motivating for me because I see that's real business. Yeah. But really, for talking motivation just in general, like giving keys to someone, especially a first-time buyer, like those moments, I'll never forget them. Okay. They're extremely motivating. I believe that real estate is the number one way to build wealth. And I want everybody to have access to it. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you do. Everyone has the opportunity. You might not be able to buy in the neighborhood in Roseville that you want. Maybe you have to buy somewhere else at a lower price point and then build up. But I want to help someone do that. Like, that's super motivating for me, helping people. It doesn't have to be a buyer. It could be an intern or a mentee, or I want to help. And that to me proves my personal worth. Did that answer you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
And then lastly, interviews and getting comfortable with those. I know you do mock interviews. How important is nailing the interview? How important is preparing for the interview? What are some things that you do specifically to prepare for interviews?
So you mean like just a job interview in general?
How important is it?
Yeah. So preparing is critical.
Okay.
Absolutely critical. And depending on who you interview with, they're going to expect you to be prepared. So one thing you can do is obviously go online. You want to look up the person. You want to look them up on LinkedIn. You want to just Google search them. Who's going to interview? And that doesn't mean you're going to ask them personal questions necessarily, but to get an idea of who's going to interview is helpful. But the other thing is really understand the organization that you're applying to. So for example, you want to know their core values. What are the core values? What is that organization value? What's their mission statement? If they're sharing any of their data because they're publicly held, how are they doing? How is it going?
Okay.
And then the last thing is going back to how it's important for me to be helpful. Go into any job interviewers. How are you going to help that team, that organization to make them better? Because that's what a job's for.
Yeah. I saw a statistic. It was like come in with 5 questions. They're yes or no questions at the end, to show that you actually care about it, you know about it.
Absolutely. And even some of that research you've done, you can get that into answering the questions they're asking, even though you don't know what the questions are, to show that you prepared. Yeah. So I over-prepared. And the other thing is even just know how to dress, what's appropriate. Like not every job interview should you be wearing a 3-piece suit.
Yeah.
What's the environment? Right? Because if you come in dressed too nice, they're going to be like, do they not know what we do here? So you've got to be, be knowledgeable about it. And you can ask the recruiter, don't be afraid. Like to me, when I would come in, to even myself, even when I got higher up, I would ask the recruiter because they want you to be successful because they picked you. They let you into the door. Yeah. Right? So you can ask them and say, what should I bring with me? What should I prepare ahead? They might give you some clues, they might not, but always ask.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Of course.